Hi, it's Tim, and welcome back to the corner for the first episode of a series that I am going to call Gem or Junk. And first up on the bench is an Apple Powerbook Duo 230. Now, back in 1993, one of these was my first ever Mac. So, gem or junk? Let's find out. I just got a job programming Mac software and I was unfamiliar with the Mac OS operating system, so I got one of these. And I kind of regretted getting rid of it. So when one of these came up at a very good price, I thought, why not? But it was sold untested, and worse than that, it was sold genuinely untested, which means 1, it doesn't work, 2, it really doesn't work, 3, it absolutely really doesn't work, and it is broken beyond belief. With all that said, gem or junk? Let's find out. I've just got this package from our sponsor PCBWay, so let's take a look. Now, I've already cut the tape, but I have not looked inside. So what have we got? We have got some stickers and a pen, and of course some PCBs. So we've got some black ones and some white ones. So this is a 1581 disk drive board, and this is a board associated with it, and this is a design of my own, which is an Arduino interface. And let's just open this up. First time I've seen these. We're going to make this on the channel in the not too distant future. We're also going to be making this 1581 at some point in the future. Thanks to PCBWay for the boards. And if you want your own boards, then all you have to do is upload the Gerber files, select the color that you want. I chose black, I chose white for these. Guys, you can't go wrong. $5 for 10 boards. Check them out, www.pcbway.com. I think this is a prime example of the principle that eBay sellers should all be, because this is basically not the machine that was in the photograph. And so this is in fact actually a lot worse looking than the picture. So we've got a hinge that does not shut, and the clasp for the hinge is actually missing. We've got a trackball that won't stay in because this plastic is broken. Now, these are not problems that are insurmountable, because we can buy replacement versions of this little trackpad thing. And I'm not sure about the hinge clasp, because that goes into this hole here, which is the switch that determines whether the lid is open or closed. And so that is what puts the machine to sleep. So that's actually quite an essential little bit. The keyboard seems a bit stiff. That spacebar is very sticky. So I think we're going to need to take the keyboard apart at least. So let's have a quick discussion about the Powerbook Duo. The Powerbook Duo was arguably the first ever MacBook Air, because it takes the principle of let's exclude just about everything that we can from the machine itself and put it externally. So there's no internal floppy drive, there are no real ports to speak of. There is basically just this little cover which exposes a dock port, and to plug anything in like a floppy drive or well, anything, printer, etc., you've got to basically plug a dock into the back, and there are several kinds of docks. There are micro docks that basically just handle a floppy drive. There are mini docks that will handle floppy drive, external monitor, hard drives, yeah. And there's even a big dock that you can actually physically put the machine into, and that also has a floppy drive built in, and it has a hard drive built in, and all sorts. So there are feet, and the feet actually work. Now that is the serial port / modem port. This is, I think, another serial port, but it's not fitted. That's the on-off switch. That's the mains supply, or the power supply. It does look kind of grubby. It's nice that the ports are all protected. This is obviously designed to be very, very portable, and I would carry it about quite a lot when I was younger. So the screen is in pretty bad shape. It's delaminating in places, you can see, and there is this scratch just there. Now, it's not a scratch in the top surface, it's a scratch underneath. So I suspect we're going to need to replace this panel. A new trackball sensor thing. Probably going to need to recap it. This is the battery cover. Let's see if there's a battery in it. Slides out and then it pulls out. It actually does pull out, so it's not swollen. Doesn't look swollen. I'll bet there's no charge on it. This switch is just an indicator. It's full empty. It has no actual operation. It's a bit crusty. There's some powdery residue. I don't know whether that's just dirt from general dirt or what. So I'm not putting that back for now anyway. So I suppose the first thing that I'm going to do is power it up and try it. Well, actually no, the first thing that I'm going to do is check out the power supply. And this is quite nice because these little arms click away, so you can hold the wire, and then it's quite a nice design. Unfortunately, there's no way, I think, to open it up. So I can't tell if it's got a reefer in it and if it's going to go smelly on me, but the first thing that I'm going to do is measure the voltage. So put that there, volts. What does it say on the back? It is supposed to be output DC 24 volts 1.5 amps. So at the worst we can get a new power supply. We can make a new power supply. So I'm going to plug this in and measure the voltage on it. Right, there is no indicator. I'm going to guess that it's center positive, although actually that is a double thingied thing, so I can't stick a probe down there without shorting it out to the outside edge. So I think we're not easily going to be able to measure that. So let's not. We're not going to get very far with this, but let's plug this in and see if it actually powers up. 3, 2, 1. Nothing. Kind of what we expected, really. Thing in the back. Nothing. Okay, so I guess we are going to take it apart. Okay, I've got some scrawled instructions because I'm not at all familiar with how to take this apart. Right, so first thing that we need to remove is the keyboard. And to do that, let's put those back. We have got, these screws are kind of rusty. 3 Torx screws. So, fortunately, even though it's rusty, it does come out. They look to be all the same. So this should just lift up. And there are these 2 ribbon cables. So to get the ribbon cable out. Okay, yes, these should just pop forward. So it needs just a little more effort. There we go. Just stiff. Okay. So they should now just come out. And that is the keyboard. A very simple affair. Slightly flexible. If we get the machine working, we'll clean that up. So the next thing to do is remove this. So the first thing we're going to do is remove these, they call them clutch covers. Let's try a junky screwdriver. There it comes. So that's one. There we go. Okay, now this 4th screw. There we go. So what have we got here? This is the main board, obviously. It's the screen display. This looks all very cruddy, so we're going to need to clean it up. I think this is the memory card. So now let's try and remove the display. So the first thing we want to do is lift the ribbon cable. Very, very carefully. There we go. And then it needs to, we need to take this thing out. I think it's some kind of ferrite bead, but it's taped down. So we need to get under there. There we go. This clutch cover comes off and it is screwed or clipped in. So let's see if we can undo the clips. I'm going to try from the back first, I think. That's out from the back. I think that's out from the front. So again, we have 2 Torx screws. That cover plate comes off. And that cover plate comes off. It should lift out. Sort of, kinda. In the most awkward way. There we go. It is kind of rusty. Now we will need to take this panel apart, but for now, so mainboard, memory, hard drive. That is the micro switch for the screen, I believe, being opened and closed. Or possibly it's that. No, it's that. That's the micro switch. This is a micro switch for something else. Right. See where we go now. I think we want to get access to the power input so that we can measure it. I think this is where the power supply is, and we're going to need to recap this in any case. It would be nice to get everything else out, and then we can clean it up, of course. Backup battery we can take out. Unplugs from here. In any case, we don't really need to put it back. It's disintegrated. Then 3 screws for the hard drive. That doesn't want to come out. I think maybe the plastic post has broken, so that is still fixed to the chassis. So let's remove the chassis. Actually, we can remove the trackball. This is the switch, so we can take the trackball out. We would need to replace this anyway because the plastic is broken. So these, you can get these new for I think 35 quid, something like that, which is quite expensive considering all that's wrong with it is this plastic bit is broken. But anyway, so we've got I think it's like a washer. It's either a washer or that's just broken off. And out he comes. So this is Apple Computer Inc. internal hard disk drive, 200 megabytes, SCSI, firmware 1992. Seagate. It's very crusty and very rusty. 68030 CPU. But what we can do is, and we can now get to the connector and we can see whether our power supply actually is producing any power. What is holding the board itself down? Does this screw down or does it just clip down? But look at the corrosion, look at it. Is that battery corrosion? Actually, yes, that is broken off. So that's going to need to be glued back on. Right, we're nearly there. So we can take memory card out. I believe you could put an extra 4 megabytes on the bottom, so that would be an 8 meg card, but this is just 4. And then that is the cover plate for the modem, which we don't have. And this is the blank, not a modem card, which is in fact a plug-in card just for the power button. Go figure that. And this is now, it's stuck with this pad here, but it should just lift out. There we go. There's a lot of chippery on the underside, as much as there is on the top. Connector for something there. This is the microphone, by the way. And that's a very crusty board. Really don't like that. I don't know whether that's battery leakage or capacitor leakage. It's not quite so bad on the bottom, but it's going to need a lot of cleaning, and there is another post that is broken off. What joy. So I guess I'm going to clean it up, because even if it's just parts, I'd rather have it clean than dirty. Before we do that, let's see if we can take this apart. In order to take this apart, we need to remove these two covers, which are just stickers, but they are effectively sacrificial, and there's going to be almost certainly no way of replacing them. But if we're going to recap the supply, or even replace the LCD panel, and I'm 100% certain that that is not going to work on its own, but I think we need to take this apart. Ugh, look at that. Rust and dirt and yuck. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get this screen apart. So we need to take these little things off. Okay, so once again, oh no, that's a different size screw. Yeah, so it's 2 sizes smaller. That one has not come out, but I think it's undone. So how do we get this apart? The instructions didn't go as far as this, so we are kind of on our own. I'm guessing there's going to be some clips inside. So we need to run the spudger along it. There we go, so that's come off. Those are the rubber buttons. Those are the buttons. That's going to be the display board. It's held in by tiny little screws. So, yeah, that's explains why that didn't come out, because that's broken. So before this ever goes back together, it's going to need a good cleaning and gluing. No, I'm not going to force that, because that will strip, and that is not going to come out. This is going to be the screen display light. That's not going to come out without getting that off. And I believe I need some WD-40 for that. I'm going to say this has been in a river or a lake or something, or a wet cellar. That might be it. Maybe we'll get this out. I think this is a disaster. It's probably going to be a write-off, but we can play around with it and see where we get. Right, so what has happened? I've started cleaning stuff up. I've cleaned the board and it's come up quite well. What I was worried about was the crud around here, and I suspected it might be battery leakage, but I don't know. I think and I suspect that this machine has actually suffered from water damage rather than battery damage, because this aluminium shell is kind of rusty in places. This is at the back, and there's patches of rust here. There's patches of rust here as well, and around here. And this is actually cracked, so you need to be careful with it. But the rust is all around basically the entry points to the case. So if we look at the screen, and I've basically put this back together. I took it apart, or tried to take it apart, but was not very successful. Now the problem is with this display that basically the LCD panel is effectively a sealed unit, and it's taped down. I think you can't get them without actually getting the front panel attached. Certainly I've looked around and tried to find a replacement. I think this is toast in any case, so it's not going to work. I suspect it's not going to work. There are capacitors on here that will need recapping, and they are under this lot. I'm not going to take that off now, actually. I sort of capped and taped this back down. At least one of the screws that hold it down, and it's actually come out, well, I cut it out, was rusted in, and it was just rusted solid. But that was rusted, the little steel plate that holds the screws down onto the plastic, that was rusted solid, and it's all sort of rusted at the top. So I think that this got immersed in water or dipped in water or something, or at least got wet, because apart from around there, there's no real damage. And then with this came off when I tried to unscrew it, and I've glued that down. I'm going to epoxy it once the cement is dry, once that has cured. And the same with the base. I've cleaned it out. I've cleaned all this plastic up. This stud here was broken, so that has been glued down, and this here also was broken, and that's been glued down, and they will be epoxied once I've got the chance. The two screws that hold the plate together are just taped down there so that I don't lose them. And this is the front plate, which is cleaned up quite nicely. I've got a nice little capacitors list. You can see I've ordered capacitors to recap the main board. So the main board, these capacitors need to be replaced, and this one, and I've got those on order. So I think the next thing that we're going to do is take these off and clean the board up, because if they have not leaked, they're going to leak. And I kind of suspect that some of the grot around here was capacitor juice, although so far, in terms of what I've cleaned so far, it has not smelled fishy like you would normally expect. So for these, I'm going to use a new to me technique. It is going to be the old twist method, and that is purely so that a new set of people can complain in the comments. Because let's face it, everybody needs to get to complain, and someone will always complain about any desoldering technique or any capacitor removal technique. Oh, if anyone knows how to crack open one of these, because this has got a reefer in it, and if it has not gone, it will go, and I would like to recap it, but can't get in. So if anyone knows how to get into those, please drop a note in the comments. Thank you very much. Right, so the technique for these is downward pressure and then just rock it from side to side. And eventually it will come off. It does look wet underneath, but I don't know if that is from the IPA that I've been using on the board or whether that is capacitor juice. They do look like they have leaked. Let me get my IPA. So those capacitors definitely needed replacing. There we go. Now it will be a few days before the replacement capacitors arrive. So that will do for now. And let's go on and have a look at the keyboard. Now I don't know exactly how this keyboard comes apart, but let's give it a go. So I think it's going to be a matter of pull the key out. So there are no springs or anything. Oh yeah, that's easy. So this is just like pulling the keys off a C64, except we don't have to worry about losing the springs. I am going to clean this, but the worry primarily is to get these buttons working properly. That are sticky. Okay, I don't know if you can see, but these have got little clips under them, exactly the same, I presume, as Commodore ones. Okay, so this is the rubber membrane, presumably. So underneath here is what looks like graphite rings, so that when you push down on the key, that is going to come out and make contact down here. And what we've got here is a ring of copper around each key, and the rubber ring is going to make contact between that and that. So this is 2 layers of plastic, and I suspect we're going to need to clean that because it looks like it's got gunge and grot and probably wet and rust under there. So that actually does lift out, and yeah, you can see that looks like it's been wet. So I'm not going to do anything to the underside, but I will give the top a clean. So this is quite an elegant little keyboard considering how low profile it is. And it's basically quite flexible. So these should just be metal contacts. And I suspect, if anything, they have corroded a little bit. I think they should either have been tinned or be plain copper. Anyway, it's quite a neat solution. It's made by Keytronic. We may not get this Mac to work, but I think we've had an interesting time taking it apart and seeing what's inside. Certainly, I think if this doesn't work, then I would like to find one that does. Now, I started cleaning the keyboard and then I discovered that the camera had filled up its SD card. So, there we go. So this should simply go back on here like that. And then I can clean up all these keys and start putting them back. You don't need to watch me doing that, do you? And here's the keyboard back together. That feels a lot more responsive. Whether it actually works or not, I don't know, and we won't find out until we get the rest of the machine working. But the keys are now clean, the keyboard membrane is clean. I could do with cleaning a little bit of the back. It does just make it a little bit cleaner. That will go into the parts bin until we are ready for it. Capacitors have arrived, so let's get them parted out and then we can put the new caps onto the board. I've got my little plan of where everything goes. So these are the capacitors for this board. So let's just remind myself, we've got capacitors 6 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 here. So this one is 33 microfarads, 16 volts. One of these, I always buy far more than I need, partly because that allows me to recap other boards, and also I have spares if it goes wrong. The black line is negative, and on here positive is marked as being that way. So that's going to go on there like that. I'm going to turn it round. In fact, what I'm going to do is put some flux on there first. Okay, turn the iron on, it helps. Right, so there we go, it's as simple as that. And turn it round and do the other side. We won't do the other side because we need a thinner tip. Let's let the iron cool down and we'll change the tips. Okay, I've got a thinner tip. So there we go. And finally, fine. So that's the board recapped. Now we can start putting it back together and see if it will actually go. Okay, so we've got the base plate, PCB. The PCB goes in here. Like that. We have the power button card, or modem card as it might be, the memory card, so that goes in there. We have a little blanking plate, which I believe goes in there, I think. And then we have the chassis that goes on the top. This is very broken. This piece is supposed to go in there. It's almost broken off. That sits in there like that. Torque screws. Now the trackball we do know is broken, so I think that's everything connected. We don't have the PRAM because the battery has died and the cable is broke. We don't have the spring in the top. But let us see what happens. Right, here's the power supply. I've not recapped this at the moment, so there's definitely a reefer in there and it's likely to go reefer smell at some point. But we will see. Does it stand a chance of working? I don't know. I suspect it won't, because I suspect it's probably dead. But we shall see. So power is applied. That's the reset button. Now it could be that the power supply is dead, of course, but as this stands at the moment, not a sausage. I'm going to put the rest of the case back together and then we shall see where we are. Okay, it's back together, kind of, as far as it's going to be. The plastic thing is for the screws didn't stick, so that just disintegrated when I tried to screw it together, and so consequently it's held together with masking tape at the moment. I think the screen is shot anyway, so I don't really hold any hope of it actually working. We don't know that the power supply works. We haven't been able to measure it because of the way that the connector is done, but pressing the power on button does nothing. So gem or junk? Well, junk. Maybe we can get a replacement power supply and try it. I don't hold out an awful lot of hope, but possibly it could be used for spares. I think the keyboard is in good condition. Not very much else is. Maybe the motherboard is fine. Now it's been recapped. The frame is certainly junk. The case is pretty much junk. We saw that there was a lot of rust inside. The screws were rusty. I think it's had some water damage. Maybe that shorted it out. Maybe that's killed the motherboard. Who knows? Maybe it's killed the display. I mean, we saw there was a lot of rust on the display. So, or at least on the frame for the display. And there's this horrible gash. It appears to be behind in one of the back layers. So, I don't know. It was cheap. You take a punt, maybe it pays off, maybe it doesn't. This one didn't. Anyhow, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like the video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. If you'd like to help the channel out, please support my Patreon. The link is in the description below. At least it hasn't exploded if there's a refit in there. I know there's a refit in there. So either the refit has already blown, or which shouldn't actually affect its power output, or it's going to blow, in which case I'll unplug it and hope it doesn't blow now.